Does it say it's recording on?
It is. Yep, I heard it. This meeting is being recorded.
Yes. All right. So my name is Morgan Moe, and I'm conducting an oral history interview as part of an effort to archive the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on individuals and communities in the Midwest for both the Chippewa Valley COVID-19 Archive and the Journal of the Plague Year COVID-19 Archive. Today's date is Tuesday, December 1st of 2020, and it is 10:33 a.m. And I am sitting with Brooke, Dusk of Wisconsin Credit Union. So just to kind of start off, could you kind of just introduce yourself and explain your position with the credit union?
Absolutely. So, yep, my name is Brooke Dusk. I work with Wisconsin Credit Union, and I'm a business loan officer. So I focus mainly on loans and all for businesses. And those are businesses of all sizes, whether you're a sole prop or you're a company that's got many, many employees. I work with businesses of all sizes. Again, I work mainly with loans, deposits and things like that are done with a different department in our team here, but love working with the business side of things.
Okay, perfect. So if you can think of a time before COVID, what was your day-to-day routine like on a normal situation?
Yeah, normally I would be in the office. I work in 3 different offices. Actually, I work for 4 different offices, but 3 of them have space for me to sit. So it would depend on which office I was going to that day, but typically I was in the office all day. It's working with a lot of members. And truthfully, even before COVID, it was a lot of phone calls, emails, things like that, because business owners are busy. They're not often just stopping into the bank to see somebody or the credit union to see somebody. So a lot of it was already done through email and through phone calls and that way. But we were available for pop-ins. We were often out seeing the members. We would go to their locations, take a look at the facility that they have, look at what they want to purchase, things like that. So there was a lot, I don't want to say a lot more interaction, but there was definitely more interaction, face-to-face interaction with the business members at that time. And again, it's from my job, it is a lot of talking with business owners, looking at what they want to use for collateral and looking at their financials to see if they can qualify for the loan that they're looking to purchase or that they need to purchase something.
Okay. And so with COVID, how has that changed? Because I'm sure it's flipped your world totally upside down.
It's been interesting because I can be a remote employee. I was sent home. So I work from home now the majority of the time. I will go into the office for appointments, for loan closings. Sometimes I work better if I actually print something and can see it and write notes on it versus everything online. So that part of it changed, just learning how to work from home, learning how to really be focused at home. But when it comes to, again, talking with the members, a lot of the members, I think, adjusted really well. I think because we were already doing so much via email, so much over phone calls, the biggest difference that I think most of our members had to experience was we did, unless it's a real estate loan closing, we can close those loans all online now with online documents that are secure. And even members that I didn't think would adapt very well to that, when we said that this is what we're doing because our lobbies were closed, a lot of them loved it. And now when we do loans, they'll say, so are we still doing it via the DocuSign system? Because they just really want to do the ease of being able to do everything online and through phone calls. So from that aspect, I think that could be somewhat of a positive of what this pandemic did, is that I do think that face-to-face is important. And I still think that's going to happen once we are all able to kind of get back to normal, whatever that should look like. But the ease and convenience and the efficiency of having some of those online tools that we have, I think that's something we're not going to let go of. That's something that's going to continue to be out there. And for a lot of our members, it just made the process so much easier.
Yeah. Do you think that like going forward, that positive change of having just like the efficiency of having it all online, do you think that that's something that will stick even after the pandemic is long over?
I do. I think not only from our organization standpoint, but again, from the member standpoint, I think a lot of business members, especially, I work a lot with small business members that are plumbers, electricians, farmers, people like that. They're out in the field. They're out doing this stuff all day long. So for them to have to come in sometime between 8:30 and 5 to sign their loan documents when they're at their busiest has always been difficult. So now that we have, we kind of got forced into using some of these online products. They were always there, but we got forced into using them and forced into kind of making our members use them. And now that I think people see the ease in that, I don't think that's something we'll ever let go of. I think that efficiency, being able to do as much of it as that we can do with online systems, it's secure, it cuts down on paper, it cuts, there's a lot of things that really helps with. And I don't see that going away. I really don't. I think the business world has had to change because of this pandemic. We got pushed into something that maybe we would have eventually gotten to anyway. But now that change is here, I just don't see them. I don't see everybody going back to the way it was. Some will want to, but I don't see very many.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's just helpful. Like even with like other people that I've talked to, I asked that same question of like, are there any positives to things that you've seen that you would keep for the future? And they say, yeah, it's helped them kind of organize better and just like make things more efficient, like you said. So
yeah, I used to think that I needed paper, and now at home, I do everything online. It's all on my screens. Again, if I need something, I will go and print it off, but it's few and far between. Yeah. And when I go into my office now, in the River Falls location, I look at all of these files and I think, I could probably scoop all of those into the shredder at this point. It's been 10 months and I haven't used any of them. I don't need that. I don't need that paper anymore. So truly, from that standpoint, I'm saving an awful lot of money for the company, not printing all of this stuff that it turns out I never really needed to print in the first place. It was just a security blanket for me that I don't need. I've learned how to function now without it.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of thinking back to March, did you think that we would still be dealing with this pandemic now that we're in December?
Oh God, no. Honestly, when the word came down first that those of us that could work from home needed to go home, it was for a 2-week period. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It was like, I kind of felt like I was getting fired. It was, I'm packing up my computer and I'm grabbing some stuff and my snacks because I won't be back in the office for 2 weeks. There was kind of like this grieving, like, holy cow, I'm getting kicked out of the office. And then it turned into a month, and then it turned into 2 months. And now again, because it's been so long, I didn't think that we'd still be here. I thought that, especially in the summer months, and maybe it's because a lot of us let our guard down in the summer because we could be outside so much, but summer felt a little more normal. We were still doing the things that I like to do, are golfing, boating, things like that. I was out doing those things. So it felt more normal to me. Now that winter's hitting and you're kind of getting back to being trapped inside, it's kind of starting to feel like, oh my gosh, no, we still are in quarantine. We still are here. Yeah. So no, in March, I had never in a million years would have thought that we would still be working and dealing with what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Are you still like, even next year, like how long are you planned to be at home?
The team here says that, we need to look at that kind of on almost a weekly basis, but I truly honestly think, and in conversations with my boss too, I honestly think this is going to be something that for those of us that can work remotely and we can do it well, we can be efficient and we can still be there for our members. We're probably going to be asked to do that until we know that the vaccine is available for the general public. And so I'm planning, just in my head, I'm planning on this kind of being how I will be working at least through spring. I've got a science background, so I watch a lot of the science aspect of everything that's going on, and just knowing my days from physics and chemistry and all that stuff I was taking in college, that, it's not as quick and simple and easy as a lot of people, I think, are thinking. And I think for the general public and for people like yourself and myself, or young and healthy, don't have underlying conditions, it's probably going to be in, second or third quarter before we see a vaccine. So does that mean that I won't be able to get back to work prior to that? Not necessarily. we may be back in spring. I don't know, but I do think it's going to be this way until we feel confident that putting the employees back in the office is the right thing to do.
Yeah. And even like you said, you're looking at it from a science perspective, like looking at it from a historian standpoint. It's like you think of like the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic and how like, yeah, it was a good 2 years that they were dealing with it, but they were able to get through it. So that's kind of like what's helping me, like, okay, it's just a little blip, like they got through it, we can get through it. So
yeah,
that's
it
kind
feels long some days, but truthfully, to think that it's already December and to think of the things that we haven't been able to do, we haven't been able to, the ways that our life have changed, to now think that it's maybe only 3 more months or 6 more months.
mm-hmm.
We're all going to be okay. We'll get through it.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely comes down to your perspective on it all, and
yeah,
that really helps you get through it. So what issues have most, like when you first heard about it, did you have like kind of a thought like, oh my God, I have to get all of this done? Like what issues were you most concerned about when you first heard about it?
I think the initial panic, just from my job standpoint, was really how are the businesses going to be able to survive, which is still an issue. A lot of businesses figured out how to adapt. And I don't want to say pivot because that's one of those words that everybody uses, just like unprecedented and all those other key words that everybody said because of this pandemic. But the small businesses that I work with, for the most part, most of them were able to adapt in the summer months. Your small bars, your small restaurants, they've figured out a way to take part of their parking lot and make that outdoor seating, things like that. When you look at what's happening in the Twin Cities, where they don't necessarily have the space to adjust, and they don't necessarily have the indoor seating because they're smaller locations anyway, they're seeing a lot. I feel like they're seeing a lot more consequences because of this. And because of that, we're seeing a lot more of them closing, unfortunately, than what we're seeing in our, small suburbs here in Western Wisconsin. A lot of our businesses, I think, again, forced into it and not a good situation to do it, but they adapted quite well on how to keep their business running, how to cut down on expenses, those types of things. So I hope that the winter months are going to help keep them going through this because of the struggles that they had. But the summer months made it a lot easier. Again, you could eat outside, you could go and grab your to-go food and sit in the park and eat it. Now you can't do those things. Now we're trapped more inside. So I do think the next few months are going to be really telling, especially for bars, restaurants, things of that nature. And that's who I hear from most of the time. A lot of the phone calls I'm getting are from businesses that are worried and concerned about what does this bring. And that would be something that I would state from a business standpoint. The conversations I had in March and April, I was no longer just a business loan officer. For a lot of the business owners, I was like a therapist. And I was somebody that just had to listen to them and listen to their fears and listen to their concerns and try to help get them focused enough to say, okay, these are the steps that I can take to move forward or do the things that I need to do to keep my business open. And a lot of the conversations very much felt like I was doing therapy versus talking to them about a loan, because they didn't need a loan.
Yeah.
They just needed to figure out how in the world are they going to get through this.
Yeah, well, that too. And like, as soon as like that safer at home order was put in place, like it was a very quick transition. Like you didn't really have a lot of time to like think like, oh my God, like, are we going to survive this? Like, what do we need to like get stocked up on so that we can? So I'm sure there were a lot of fears that people were dealing with, and especially those smaller businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. From a personal standpoint, I kind of wondered like, why is everybody buying so much toilet paper?
Yeah.
It's only 2 weeks. We're going to be fine. Don't you have enough toilet paper for 2 weeks? I just didn't think of it as, holy cow, this could be a lot longer than it was. So I wasn't somebody who was out there hoarding. I know people who were. I tried not to judge them. But it's, the initial concern was a lot of, if if we can't support our businesses, what does that mean for my job? If I don't have a business, you don't need a business loan officer.
Yeah.
So dear Lord, we got to get our businesses through so that I still have a reason to be here.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of segues into this question of like, what kinds of aid were you guys able to offer the businesses that were struggling?
From a local standpoint, we could do deferrals where if they needed some time to not have to make their loan payment, we could give them a certain amount of time to kind of really just figure themselves out, have that time to adapt their business. The thing to keep in mind when we did deferrals is that it didn't extend that maturity date. They then, if they took 3 months to not pay, they had to make up those 3 months in the rest of the time they had before that loan matured. So for some businesses, that was a little bit of a struggle to say, okay, but we can do this for you, but unfortunately you need to think that you're going to be making bigger payments then once this is all said and done. We also did interest only for people. So that was super beneficial for some who they could just pay the interest, which is much smaller than their normal payment. And then we did do some, what we called kind of emergency loans, which was we would do it like a kind of a line of credit for them for a short period of time. And we could defer the payments so they didn't have to make any payments during that time. And let's say we did that for 6 months. Well, then for the next 18 months, it was an amortized loan and they had monthly principal and interest payments that they had to make. But for those 6 months, it gave them a little bit of money to kind of keep them afloat and not have to make any payments. That's what we did locally. Nationally, I'm sure you heard about the PPP loans, which was something that we did take part in. That was a heck of a program, which is still going. We're still working on forgiveness of it. But that was a lot of our time for business loan officers, because there was a amount of time that they had to get your money in, you had to get your application in. And there was only a certain amount of money that was there to use. Business loan officers, I would say I was logged on to my computer probably at 7 a.m. and would not log off until 9:30 or 10 p.m.
Wow.
And you were eaten at your computer kind of thing, because we knew that there was only a certain amount of money out there and I wanted my members to get it. So it was a lot of work and it was a lot of stress, and it was a short period of time of that, but we did it. And I think we helped pretty much everyone that we could in our communities that could qualify for that loan, which was great. Again, now we're working through that forgiveness aspect of it, which is, its own headache. It's a government program. Government programs take time. But I do think that those funds were needed, and I'm glad that they developed that program and they developed it as quickly as they did, because it did, I truly believe, help keep some of our businesses afloat.
Yeah, for sure. Do you kind of foresee something like, clearly another lockdown is possibly going to be happening in our future? Do you kind of foresee like some more extra efforts to be taken to help for those that would need it?
Yeah, I sure hope so. Especially for our restaurants, catering companies, bars, things, movie theaters, things of that nature. I think, again, some of our businesses were able to adapt, and they adapted very well when it comes to, like widget makers and things like that. They've managed to do fine. Some of our retail stores, maybe they're not seeing as many people in the stores, but they've been able to do a lot of online sales now, so they're doing okay as well. I do think that the winter is really going to hurt, though, the bars, restaurants, catering companies, movie theaters, things like that. So everything that I've heard is that Congress is working on stimulus plans that will maybe only be focused on those businesses, if that's the only amount of money that we can get approved. But I do think, and I do hope, that our Congress does something and gets something put together for the businesses for the winter months. The best analogy I have is, my God, we got them this far. Let's not leave them in the 11th hour and then say, okay, good luck. We can't do that to our businesses. We got you through this far. We need to help to get you to spring. And then, at that time, then you'll be on your own, and we'll have to kind of figure out how to pay back some of the debt that we are obviously accruing here in our country because of this. But we're all hoping, we're all waiting.
Yeah, for sure. And like you kind of mentioned, like how there are people that are deferring their loan payments. Do you feel like that could also kind of be hurting them? Because if they have to make bigger payments and like later on, like, is that something that is also kind of in the back of your mind? Like we might have to do something more to help that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that was the biggest thing when the members would call and ask for a deferral, was explaining to them what that actually looks like. Because I think a lot of people thought, well, okay, my loan doesn't mature until December of 2023. So if I take a 3-month deferral, now it won't mature until March of 2023. And once I get back into it, my payments will all be the same. Well, unfortunately, that's not how a deferral works. So it was really explaining to the member, this is really how this works.
Mm-hmm.
If this is something you want to do, we can do it, but keep in mind that means that you're going to have to put some extra payments towards this loan once we get to the other side of this. Yeah, we honestly, as business loan officers, when we met, we really prepared for what happens when our deferral periods are up and these businesses need to start making payments again. We need to prepare for that, because if they can't make payments again, what do? You know, I mean, you can't, unfortunately, it's not good for a member to say you don't have to make a payment for a year, because
Mm-hmm.
dear Lord, they'll never come out of it. Then you've really put them underwater when we get to the time when we can hopefully start making those payments again. So really trying to manage that has been difficult. Thankfully, again, the members that I've worked with, everyone is out of their deferral period and everyone's making their monthly payments. And I'm very thankful for that, because we were preparing for what does that look like. And truthfully, I can't even tell you exactly what it would look like, because with every business, it's something different.
Yeah.
You know, for some of them, it would be just totally redoing the loan and re-amortizing it out. For some, it's, do you ever see yourself coming out of this? You know, it doesn't make sense to redo the loan if you're never going to come out of it and you're not going to be able to pay it. Then we have to look at what the next steps are to collect on that loan.
Yeah.
So again, thankfully in our area, our businesses have done pretty well, but I do think it's because we're in small communities and our community cares so much about the person that owns that business, that they're going and supporting that business. You know, the movie theater, even if you can't go to the movie theater, they're selling that buttered popcorn, and there will be lines of people waiting to buy that buttered popcorn. You know, you're just buying popcorn, but you're trying to support that business. And I think in the small communities, that really matters.
Yeah, for sure. Were there some businesses that had to call it quits and just close because of everything?
Yeah, we're seeing that now. I didn't see very much of it during the summer months, but we are seeing it now. We're seeing it more now, because I think they're looking ahead and saying, I'm not going to be able to make it through more shutdowns, or I'm not going to be able to make it through the winter.
Mm-hmm.
So we are seeing that. What we do if that happens is we work with each business individually. We look at what their debt is, what we had for collateral. Are there things that you can sell that we used as collateral to help pay down this debt? If not, then we take a look at that debt and say, okay, if we kind of have to turn this over and you're now paying from it individually versus a business paying for it, what can you afford? What are those monthly payments that you can afford? And we do what we call it's called a troubled debt restructure. And we look at that debt and say, okay, we need to restructure this. There are rules that we have to follow through the state and regulations and national regulations to make sure that we're following all of those rules in doing something like that, because we can't offer them special terms that we wouldn't offer anybody else unless we actually structure it as a troubled debt restructure. But we have plans in place, and businesses have gone out of business prior to pandemic. So we kind of know how to deal with it and how to move forward with it. But it's different for every business, because it really depends on how big of the loan it is and what we had for collateral and how we can handle that.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say was the biggest challenge that you've had to face as a loan officer, or maybe even in your personal life during this whole pandemic?
I think managing the fact that I don't have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I really think I'm somebody who is a little bit of a control freak. If you know me, I need to be in control. And this year was definitely a year that there was no such thing as control. I didn't have answers. We've never been through this before. Nobody has. You can even look over in European nations or Asian nations to see how did they handle it. Nobody has been through this before, so we just don't have the answers. So when it comes to trying to help the businesses who have all these questions, I don't have answers. And I hate that I don't have answers because I want to have answers for people. So that from a work standpoint, I think has been the most frustrating thing. And even with the PPP loans, the forgiveness prospect or the process and even when we could start applying for forgiveness has been just this waiting game. Why don't we know? Why aren't we doing this yet? What's happening? Because we don't have answers. And that to not have any answers drives me crazy. So that part has been really hard. From a personal standpoint, I mean, it's been controlling what I can control. Mm-hmm. And the things that I can't control, I've had to, come to the realization that I can't sit and debate in my head over and over and over, and I can't watch the news channels all the time in hopes that I can find an answer in there somewhere. I have to be okay with letting go and realizing that some of these things I can't flip to the last page of the book to read the answer. I have to wait it out like everybody else. And it's something that's very frustrating for somebody who has control issues. So that part's been tough, but it's been controlling what I can control and managing what I can manage and trying to focus on that.
Yeah. And I'm sure not having the answers is tough too, because you have all these businesses that are worried about what's going to happen next. And you're just like, I don't know.
And that's a lot of the conversations. And I've tried to be very, very open and honest with my members. And for some of them, even that we will be working with a different loan officer, they'll call me and say, hey, so my buddy said blah, 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 and you said this. And I've said, I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I'm not going to lie to anybody. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. And if I don't know the answer, I don't know the answer, but I want you to know that your frustration is shared by me, and I'm frustrated too.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the answers either. So, even if it was just telling my business, you are not in this alone. I am here as frustrated as you are and as scared as you are, because again, if I don't have the business, I don't have a job. So I need these businesses to be here. And sometimes it was just that communication with somebody to say, you hear it on the TV all the time, like, oh, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. But sometimes you just really need to hear that person on the other end of the line say, I'm with you, and tell me how I can help. And if helping is just literally listening to your fears, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's how I'm going to be here to help you. So that connection, I mean, it stinks that we can't be face to face, but to be able to have conversations like this and to be able to have phone conversations with members and to just be there for them. And then for me, because they can, one member that I have, he's like, how are you hanging in there? You still frustrated? And I'm like, sure am. Are you? I still don't have any answers. So it's, it's been nice to know that we are all there trying to help each other, really.
Would you say that one positive that has come out from this is that it's helped you kind of build those relationships and kind of make them stronger?
A very good point. I think some of the members haven't seen me as real as when this happened, because you're always professional and you always put on that professional face and you always do what you need to do. And I'm just realizing that the sun is really shining on me here. So I apologize for that. I kind of feel like can you see me now? But one of the things I think is that a lot of members that I've worked with are seeing me for who I really am. And for a lot of them, in taking down that whole, professional thing and now just being a human being who has the feelings and the emotions and all of that with them has really strengthened some of those relationships that I hope will last for years and years to come, that their business will still be there. And if they need something, that they can come and I can be the one that can help them kind of get through that. So there's definitely positives that have come out of this. And I think that's really important that we don't forget that and we don't let 2020 kind of be in vain, that we actually look at, there was a lot of sadness, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of confusion and thing, but what did we all for the most part have gotten through it. And how have we done that? And let's really focus on those positive things and then continue to build on those as we move forward, because it's just going to make us better.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely kind of shows you how resilient we are and how we can just take it day by day. Whatever happens, happens, and
yeah,
just
and
call
the
it.
fact that we have all kind of been able to do this together. It's when most of the time when you're grieving something, you're kind of grieving on your own. Or you know, if it's the loss of a family member or something, it's a small group of you that's going through this. And this has touched every single person. So to be able to know that if there's anything, you know, that you can reach out to almost anyone and say, you know, this is kind of how I'm feeling, and this is where I'm at. And even going into the office when I do, I'll go in there and I'll be like, oh, you guys, I'm so sorry, but I'm just like, I am at quarantine fatigue. Like don't want to wear this mask anymore, and I don't want to do this anymore, and I don't want to, and it's just, you can just vent it all out and know that they feel the same way that you're talking to, because they're going through it too.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of going through like mental health has been a huge topic through this whole quarantine. How do you feel like, and you could probably say this for both of your members as well as you, but how has it kind of affected your mental health in that way?
Yeah, huge. I think I've noticed it, you know, in some of the members, which is happening everywhere. I think when you get confined in a space with a certain person, you know, your significant other or whatever it may be, I think that has brought to light whether that's the person you were supposed to be with or that's not the person you're supposed to be with. So truthfully, the thing that I'm probably seeing the most of are not necessarily businesses failing, but divorces happening, and those businesses having to be split up or sold to one person or another. Definitely more this year than I've ever had in my career as a business loan officer. But it's one of those things too. I mean, my husband and I now have been working both from home, both every single day of the week, and we have managed it very, very well, like way better than I think a lot of other people have. It's worked really well for us. We both work during the same hours, so maybe that's something that's helped. But from, you know, a mental health standpoint of it, it is one of those things where, you know, I miss being able to say, it's a Saturday night, let's go play cards with our friends.
Yeah.
You know, just, we don't have anything going on this weekend. What should we do? Let's go figure out what to do. And you can't do that now. You're like, okay, what's on television? You know, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. So from that standpoint, I guess I didn't realize how much you miss the things that you can't do anymore. But also knowing that it'll come back, you'll be able to do that. But I think, you know, there's a couple different business loan officers that I talk to almost every single day, and we have all kind of, you know, ridden the wave. We've had times when we've been really high and maybe they've been really low, and there'll be like 3 or 4 days where you're just low. Like, it's just, you're tired of not having the answers to help your members and just all those different things. And I think it's really strengthened those relationships with those other loan officers as well. I mean, one of the guys, when I've been down, he'll call like first thing in the morning and say, okay, how are you? How are you doing today? What's going on? Or he'll call right at the end of the day and say, okay, I know it was a bad day today. Hang in there. Tomorrow's coming, you know. And it was just having that support with that other person to say, I know you're having a bad day. This is where I was 2 weeks ago and you helped me, so I'm going to help you through it. That was something that that connection I probably wouldn't have had as strong prior to this happening, because maybe I wouldn't have shared as much either prior to this happening. So, you know, I think, like you said, mental health has become a very big issue that has come to light because this pandemic has forced us to look at it. And it's extremely important. And I don't know the answers. I don't know how to fix all of those things, but I think if you are noticing those things in yourself, whether you're scared because of a business or you're a business loan officer or anybody out there, I think the first thing you need to do is communicate, and you need to reach out and talk to somebody.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, it's like I live alone, I go to work, and because everyone else is working from home or shut in their office, I'm just like, don't get much human interaction. So I know when I go to my parents' house or something, I'm like talking their ear off because I'm like, I haven't had any human interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it verbally vomiting, which is
Yeah.
what I also do to your mother when I go into the Prescott office and I'm like, I'm sorry that I'm like verbally vomiting on you, but I'm talking to somebody else about, you know, it's just like,
Yeah.
I got to get all this out. So, and maybe that's another good thing. I mean, maybe that's something where we've all now realized how important that human interaction is. And when we can have it back, we're kinder to people, and we, you know, want to keep that connection more than before when we probably took it for granted.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you go from working in an office surrounded by people to being sent home. I'm sure that was a huge adjustment.
Yeah. Again, I felt like I was getting fired. Like I'm packing up my box and I'm all sad. Like I'm going through a grieving process now because what just happened? I'm getting sent home. What do you mean?
Mhm.
Um, so it does, it takes that away. But I also think I took those guys for granted, that they were always there and I always had somebody that I could run out and talk to.
Mhm.
And that probably won't happen again. You know, I will realize how important that interaction really is.
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of now starting to wrap up here. Um, how has your experience transformed the way you think about your family, your friends, and your surrounding community?
I think, kind of as I mentioned before, I didn't realize what I was taking for granted, the ability to go and, you know, go over to somebody's house and play cards and have a couple drinks to relax on a weekend that we haven't been able to do for months. I'm really looking forward to being able to have something like that back. So realizing how important that those friendships are,
Mhm.
just things that we all took for granted, being able to go to a sporting event, totally took that for granted. Concerts, those types of things, those are things that were just always available that were taken away, that now I think I'm going to have a new respect for, to be able to do that.
Mhm.
Part of what I hope we see, I mean, I hope that we don't, when we can get back to normal, I hope we don't give up on our cleaning that we've been doing. I think, I don't know, because I have not seen any documentation or any studies being done, but normally we'd be pretty thick into the flu about now.
Mhm.
And if we aren't this year, is it because of the fact that we're being more clean? Is it because of the fact that we're wearing masks? Obviously, we need to take care of this pandemic, but the flu is a big issue every single year as well. And so if we can learn something from how we're fighting COVID to be able to fight the flu, which also stinks if you get that. Nobody wants that either. I just hope that we stay clean. I hope that people realize, you know, and some of those habits that we formed were that you do have to wash your hands. That's important.
Yes.
Which, let's just admit, there were a lot of people who were not doing that.
Mhm.
So those are the things that I really hope stick and that will change us forever, is just being cleaner and maybe giving ourselves a little bit more space. You know, don't be a close talker, and just some of those things that it's still great. It's going to be great to be able to get back into public, but we need to still be smart about the way that we do it.
Yeah, for sure. And when you talk about the flu too, like I got my flu vaccine for like the first time in maybe like 7 years this year because I was like, if I get the flu and end up in a hospital bed, like that's one hospital bed that a COVID patient can't have.
Right.
So I was like, if I can help, at least I can get my flu shot and
Right.
help that.
Right. All the little things. And maybe and however this vaccine is that we're using for COVID, can we use some of those ideas for a stronger vaccine against the flu, to
Yeah.
just be done with the flu too? You know, I mean, I'm hoping, again, I'm a scientist by schooling. So I'm really hoping that all of the science that we're learning in these last 9, 10,
Mm-hmm.
11, 12, 13 months, however long it's going to take for us to get to that point, that's just going to advance us that much faster with these types of things. So I have a lot of hope and a lot of positivity that what we've had to do to try to kill COVID, that we can use that same science in things like cancer treatments and all the other issues and all the other, health things that we have going on, let's use that science, and maybe we're just going to be so much better, and our bodies are going to be so much stronger because of all of it. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. So now that you're talking about science, it's kind of bringing me into a new question that I just thought of. How do you feel about kind of just all the people that are discrediting the science and saying that it's all a hoax? Like, what, as a scientist or someone who studied science, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I think this whole thing would have looked different and would have been handled differently if it weren't an election year. And I hate the fact that politics take over our lives. And I apologize for anybody out there who's watching this or reading this who is a big politician or loves the politics aspect of our country. But I hate that the politics were allowed to get into this and skew things, because again, from a science aspect of it, there's a science behind this. And whether people wanted to say, oh, it's just the flu, it's a strain like that, but it's pneumonia. It's, that's what it is. It's pneumonia. And if you haven't had pneumonia, you can't sit there and tell me that pneumonia and the flu are the same, because they're not. Mm-hmm. And yes, the flu affects everybody differently, and COVID for the most part affects everybody differently. It's how our bodies handle things. That's science. So the people who, there's plenty of people that you see on the news that say, I thought it was a hoax, and then I got it, and my God, it's not a hoax. Yeah. Some of the members that I talked to that, in March were saying, more people die of the flu, and I'm talking to them now, and they're like, yeah, so, my father and my brother and I, we all had it, and this is what the experience was. And my father went into the hospital. This is real stuff, and whether it affects me like a common cold, but it affects the grandma and puts her into a hospital bed, I don't want to discredit the fact that, it's just a common cold. It's not just a common cold, because it affects everybody differently. Yeah. And that mindset of what happens to me happens to everybody in this world needs to stop. And you need to realize that for every single person, this virus has affected everybody differently. The quarantine has affected everybody differently. No two people are the same. We've all had our own experiences because of this. But from a science standpoint, you'd be a fool to say that this is a made up thing. It's just not. You just you're not listening to the science of it then. You're just trying to discredit it because you don't want to believe in it. And to each their own. We can only, there's people who don't want to vaccinate against anything because they're not comfortable with that. And those are their beliefs. And I'm not here to tell them that they're wrong. I have to do what's right for me. Mm-hmm. And I think if we all just kind of focus on that, we can get rid of some of the hatred that's out there. Is that it's, Morgan, what you believe is what you believe. And you believe those things because this is where your life brought you to. And you've had life experiences that I haven't. And that's why your beliefs are the way that yours are. But I've had life experiences that you haven't. And that's why my beliefs are the way that mine are. And neither one is wrong. So we just need to respect that and recognize that I have to do what's right for me. And if what's right for me is believing in the science, getting the vaccine when it comes out, and being as safe as possible, that's what is right for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost just like that lack of empathy that we're missing out on is kind of, because I was listening to a podcast and they were saying that like right now in the US, like it's not the politicians that are the enemy, it's not the health officials that are the enemy, it's each other.
Absolutely.
That's kind of something that's really dangerous and very scary to think about.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a good point, because it was one of the things I put out a weather email every day, and I put in there when the election was happening, is that just because you might vote for somebody that I don't vote for doesn't make you the enemy. Mm-hmm. And it also doesn't make the person that you're voting for the enemy. Yeah. Nobody's the enemy. We all, like, if we could just listen to each other. And again, if we understand where somebody's coming from in their life, it makes their views and their opinions different if we listen to why they have them versus just them saying them. That all being said, I don't think you should ever get your news from Facebook. So let's just start there. Please don't get your news from Facebook. But again, from going back to your original question the science of it and the frustration of it. Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, I roll my eyes a little bit because in my mind, just having that science background and having the science brain that I have, how can you not believe it when it's right here in black and white on paper? The studies have been done. This is what this shows. How are you not believing this? But again, I try really hard to just respect the fact that other people have had different life experiences, and they're not going to see my point of view. So
Yeah.
control what I can control. As much as I have control issues and would like to control it all, I need to control what I can control. So
taking the deep breaths.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, like there are so many times where like how you said, like people who say that it's just the flu, I almost want to come back and just say like, when was the last time over 200,000 people have died from the flu in less than a year?
Right.
But again, it's just like biting your tongue, like.
Right. Because you can say that, but they're going to come back, you know, because there's been times when, again, from any business that sits in front of me, they should not know what side I sit on politically. They shouldn't, you know, those are things that should never be evident in a conversation with a member that I'm talking to. But when they're saying those things and you have to do the smile and nod, and you, yes, well, it'll be interesting, you know, especially in an election year, you're always like, well, it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. It's those things where you have to realize that I could try to come back at them with facts, but they're going to think that they're not facts. And you know, maybe I got my facts from NBC and somebody else found different facts on, you know, Fox 9 or whatever. And, you know, I mean, so it's really, unfortunately, we get our news in so many different places now that who the heck knows what's true and real. You really just have to do what's best for you. And the mask thing is a big part of it. You know, I see people still coming in to the credit union and they're not wearing a mask, or at least when our lobbies were open and they're not wearing a mask, and you look at them and you're kind of like, how are you not? Just be respectful of other people and put a mask on. But I don't know their story. I don't, you know, maybe they have a medical reason why they're not. So I can't shame them. I don't know their story. I just know what's best for me. And what was best for me is I am going to wear a mask until I'm told that it's safe to not wear one, even though I don't like them, but I will do it. So.
And again, it's just that empathy. Like you don't know what other people are going through.
Yeah.
So, and then one final question, because this kind of segues into it almost perfectly. Kind of knowing what you know now, what do you think that individuals, communities, or our government need to keep in mind for the future as we move past this?
I think, I mean, obviously the science of it, I hope, is always going to be something that we will build off of. I don't think, I think it's great to think that the new vaccines that come out are going to be perfect. I don't think they will be. Just, again, spending the amount of time that I've spent in doing experiments and things like that. Experiments, you typically don't get your answer the first time around. Something is different. Something can be improved upon. So I hope that we just continue to build off of that. For our businesses, I think our businesses, again, I think they adapted very well. I think a lot of businesses, when they start a business, that they have the blinders on and they say, this is what my business is going to be. And this is how I'm going to run it. And this, you know, threw a big boulder at them to say, you're going to have to change and you're going to have to figure out how to change. And being able to do that is a skill. I'm just as guilty as anybody, where I kind of get stuck in my ways, and to say, okay, you need to change something to be able to grow and be better. And that change is going to be uncomfortable. It's hard to just then take that first step into that change. But I think a lot of our businesses did a great job doing that. And I hope that those businesses continue to recognize that and say, you know, hey, I was a gym and maybe I was focused on having the school kids come in and use my gym. But now that my gym is open, I'm realizing that I'm getting a lot of actually senior citizens coming in. And now that needs to be my focus. I need to be able to change and make that change. So that's what's best for my business. And I think taking that individually too, looking at the things that have been frustrating this year and how to get through them, either in work or in personal life, and building on that. And again, that change is uncomfortable, but we have to take those first steps, because we'll never be better than what we are today if this is where we're going to stay. So we have to get uncomfortable, and we have to accept that things are uncomfortable, and sometimes they're painful, and that's been a lot of 2020. But we can't let that go in vain. The only way we're going to be better is to build off of that, and to take those then uncomfortable and scary steps forward, to be either that better person or that better business or whatever that is. And that's what I hope we see in 2021, is that people don't just say, well, it's 2021 now. 2020's done. Let's forget it ever happened. I don't want to forget that this happened. I don't think we can forget that this happened. I think we need to take the positive lessons we got from it and continue to take those scary steps forward, so that we can all be better, whether it's internally or externally or as a community. We just need to keep taking those steps.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of like how you kept talking about the uncomfortable, it's like we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we have to accept it.
mm-hmm.
And even when we feel like things can be comfortable again, even I'm just thinking of, River Falls as a community, when things can kind of seem more back to normal, I just hope that we don't forget all of the things that we went through that got us to that point. Because I think there's been little issues that have been hiding in a lot of things. And those issues, I think, came to light because we had time to actually think about them and look at them, because we weren't distracted by children's sports activities or sporting events or music concerts or all the different things that we were doing. We were forced to slow down, and we were forced to focus on those things and maybe see those issues that have been hiding under the surface for a long, long time. And it's time to take those issues out, bring them to light, and really work on fixing them, because it's the only thing and the only way that we're going to be stronger.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of insight. And that's kind of like what the whole point of this project is so that we don't forget what people have learned and different people's experiences and what those experiences have taught them.
Yeah. So. And that's why, again, when you asked me to do this and I was kind of looking into what this really was, I love the idea of it, because we all remember the things that are like the big things. Again, from a meteorological standpoint, you always say, oh my gosh, it used to be so snowy when we were kids, but you're just remembering maybe one snowstorm, and the rest of the year there was hardly any snow. You don't remember that because those days were mundane and boring, and those aren't the ones that stick in your head. The days that stick in your head are the blizzard or the hurricane or the big stuff. Those are the memories that stick. And so we need to take 2020 and we need to make sure that we keep these stuck in here so that we can continue to build off of what was sad and make it not sad anymore.
Yeah. Growing and evolving.
Yeah. And it's hard and nobody likes to do it, but if you don't, you're never going to be any place other than where you are. And if where you are is not making you happy, you have to take that scary first step and move towards something else.
For sure. I think that's a good ending note for this. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I loved your perspectives on everything, and I think it will be a great addition to the archive.
Nice. Good. I'm glad. This was fun. And thank you for thinking of me and inviting me to be a part of this.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Okay.